number 2 and the number 5 on Twitter. If you got any questions for me, you want to talk about anything in particular, go ahead and hit me up on Twitter. Give me a shout and ask away, and I'll be more than happy to answer whatever it is you guys want to know about. So, before we get into the show, I would uh, I would like to thank my aunt Natalia for sending me a question right off the bat before I even got started. Um, she wants to know my political take on the current market. Well, I'd have to say that I'm extremely pleased with the current market due to the fact that none of my none of my checks from work have bounced yet. Um, Therefore, the work that I put in every day is being I'm being paid for, so that's a good thing. Because I was in a situation, I want to say back in 2003, I worked for a company who had multiple investors, and one of the investors went rogue, and he just so happens to be the investor that really had control over the bank accounts. And being pissed off at the other three investors, he froze the accounts. So not only did my check bounce, but everybody else's check bounced. And of course, people get their paychecks and they pay their bills and they pay their rent and their mortgage and their car notes and their insurances and all that. And then all of a sudden, the bank goes, "Wait, you're making all these payments, but this check you deposited bounced." So now all those checks bounce, and it was a crazy mess. Um, but on the serious note, I don't really pay attention to the current market or the political scene, or if you knew me in the past when Dustin and Dell and myself were doing the podcast for over 3.5 years, close to 300 shows, you know that I'm really not into politics. I really don't care about politics. As far as the foreign markets and the markets here in America, they don't really bother me because, well, in all honesty, I don't really make enough money for them to bother me. I make just enough money to live comfortable, to provide for my family, and that's really all I worry about. I don't care that Donald Trump is the president. I don't care who the senator of Texas is. I don't care who my mayor is. I know Sylvester Turner's the mayor of Houston because he's been on social media quite more than any other mayor in the past. Although you could argue that mayors in the past didn't really have the access that he has now to social media. But even then, I really don't care because the way I live my life is in a bubble. And next in my life is what's going on inside my home, what's going on at my job, what's going on at my wife's job, and what's going on with my kids' schooling. That's all that I really concern myself with. I don't really pay too much attention to politics. Never have, never will. Simply because I don't know what goes on in politics. And I really don't care what goes on in politics. It's funny because a couple individuals at work say, "Well, y'all talk sports all the time and y'all argue about sports and this game and that game and what happened and what has to happen and what can happen or what didn't happen." And to that I say, "Well, yeah, because what we're watching is what we're watching is playing out right in front of our eyes. Like there's there's no collusion, there's nothing there's nothing shady behind the scenes going on, and we can see it all play out right in front of our eyes and then make comments or have opinions or in one certain direction because of what we saw. And that's pretty much the difference between sports and politics. We don't see what's going on behind the scenes. We don't see what's happening on Capitol Hill. We don't see what's happening in City Hall, and who's doing what. And there's just so many things that are shady, and we'll never know because we can't see them because they're not happening right in front of our face like sports are. And that's the difference. That's why I love sports, because it all plays out right in front of us. It all plays out in front of us, and we can, and what we see, we can watch the same exact game, like the Texans game. We'll get into the Texans game here in a minute. But like Texans game, I've seen 30, 40 different opinions, 30, 40 different perspectives, 30, 40 different views of a certain situation in that game, and most of them are different. They're all different. They're not the same. And it just goes to how people can think, you know, differently. Although you're seeing the same exact thing, people can take that and it can be different than what I see or what you see or what someone else sees. And so, getting into that, we can start off with the Texans and how they dropped a game in Philadelphia, in which, you know, the whole cliche of it's the NFL, it's hard to win on the road. It's tough to play in a road environment. And, the Texans are playing in the elements, which the elements really didn't play a factor because it was a fairly nice day in Philadelphia. But, you know, I see a lot of people pointing the finger at Bill O'Brien. I've seen some people point the finger at Rack, Romeo Crennel. Um, and my my view on the matter is, A, they should have won that game. B, that game should have never been as close as it was going into half. And C, you should never have put yourself in a position to have to make a stop at the end of the game in order to win that game. I mean, say what you want, you know, when Bernard McKinney intercepted that pass at the 50 near midfield, and you find yourself in a 4th and 2 situation on the plus side of the 50, even though the ball was at like the 45 or the 43 or whatever it was, pretty close to midfield, you know, my line of thinking is, how do you not approach that situation in that game as a must win, knowing what was on the line? Now, obviously, if they knew the Chiefs were going to lose again later on during the day, do they change how they approach that situation? Do they change the plays that they call? Do they change their approach to that specific situation after the Bernard McKinney interception? And obviously, I think the answer is yes, because that's when you have an opportunity to catch a 2 seed or catch a 1 seed and receive a bye going into the playoffs, and you get an extra week off, so you have 2 weeks of full rest. You have to take full advantage of that. And I just think them going into that game and that one particular situation, and then the other situation where they punted on the plus side of the 50, there has to be a mental side of coaching that says, we're on the road. We have an opportunity to really put our foot on their throats, really have an opportunity to build a cushion, maybe put up more points. If anything, rung more clock with a new, fresh set of downs. And then you do what you need to do to to make sure that happens. And for them to just kind of wave the white flag and punt in those situations, I didn't agree. I didn't agree with them punting in those two situations. Go for it. What do you got to lose? I mean, what do you have to lose? You're supposed to lose that game on the road against that team anyway, if we're being realistic. And a lot of people say, well, they won, 10 out of 11 row. They were on a roll. You know, there was still a lot of football left. Right. Exactly. That's a good point. There was a lot of football left. As a matter of fact, there was so much football left that if you go for it on 4th and 2 and you don't pick up that first down, and the Eagles take the ball and they go down and score, and they drive and they score, guess what? You still have a lot of football left to make that up. You still have a lot of football left to keep yourself in the game, to get the lead. I mean, the Texans were down 13 with 5 minutes to go, and they made up 14 points in a span of about, what, 3 minutes? Because I think the Eagles got the ball back right at the 2-minute warning. So there was a lot of football left, and there was a lot of time left, and you can play field position and you could play all this. All of that to me is mumbo jumbo. That's just bullshit radio coach talk. Like, yeah, who gives a shit about flipping the field when your defense is playing as poorly as they played in that second half? Who cares? Does it really matter where the Eagles got the ball? Obviously not. In the last drive of the game, the Eagles started at the 10-yard line after a penalty. So no, it didn't matter where the Eagles got the football. You weren't going to stop them anyway. So I mean, play that game as if that game means you can solidify a number 2 seed, which is exactly what that game meant. That's exactly what that game meant. And it's troubling to me. And I'm not all laying the blame on Bill O'Brien, because he managed to put together a game plan, and he managed to step on the gas and open up the playbook when he did. And the Texans put up 30 points, 31 points, 30, 31 points, whatever it was. So score, they just couldn't get a stop at the end. But in that situation, in that moment of that 4th and 2, Deshaun Deshaun Watson had already shown you I can run the football and I can pick up. I There's no doubt in my mind if 2 yards are needed, Deshaun Watson can pick up 2 yards, even if that means going five wide, empty backfield, letting them pick a lane. And this whole talk about, oh, it makes me so nervous when he gets out of the pocket and he runs. I'm glad he's sliding more because he doesn't need to take necessary contact. You know what? At some point along the way, Deshaun Watson is going to have to put his head down. He's going to have to lower his shoulder, and he's going to have to fight for 2 yards at some point. If you're looking to win a Super Bowl, that's what it's going to have to take from that young man. And I'm not criticizing Deshaun Watson. I'm not saying he should have, would have, could have, or anything like that. All I'm saying is a 4th and 2 situation. I think they were up by 3 at the time. Hey, go get 2 yards. Go get 2 yards. If you can't count on Deshaun Watson getting 2, or is he really the freak that we're talking about? Is he really the just the baller that everybody's putting on him? I mean, honestly, if you're gonna run, what was it, a 3rd and goal jet sweep from the 5 and keep it in his hands and let him run for that touchdown on a design quarterback run play that they called. Why are you not willing to do that in that situation, in that game, with as much that was on the line being on the line? You can't make a call like that to pick up those 2 yards and pick up that first down. Now, listen, if they try and they go for it and they fail, okay, no big deal. I'll turn the tide. I'll turn the tables back around on you guys. There was a lot of football left in that game. A lot of football left in that game. But like I said, to pick up those 2 yards, pick up a first down, you get to run more clock. Even if you fail in the next 3 plays, you're still burning game clock. You're still in the whole play, right? If anything, you may get in the field goal range for Fairbairn to put you up 6, to where you're not trailing if they score. You're only trailing down. You only be down by 1 if they punch it into the end zone on their next possession instead of being down 4. Now, granted, the Eagles only got, I think they kicked the field goal and tied it up at 16 in that situation, but I don't know, man. It's tough because what the Texans did going on that 9-game run, and then again, you know, doing it the way that they did it, to where they only manhandled a couple of teams that really weren't blowout wins. They were just finding ways to win week after week after week, just finding a way to win, finding a way to win. And then, of course, you drop the game to the Colts, which was also a winnable game. And then you go on the road and you play a Jets team that, for all intents and purposes, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say that here in the second part of the season, the Jets have been playing better football, because they have been playing better football. And I mean, they've been playing a brand of football that's got me thinking, without a Josh Gordon and not a healthy Gronk, I think they can go into New England and make some noise. I'm not saying they can win that game, but they can they can make it extremely tough on the Patriots this weekend. And of course, the Texans would need the Patriots to lose. The Texans would need to win their game, and they could still end up in a 2 seed and get that bye. Slim chance of that happening, although it's not. I'm not so convinced that the Patriots are going to take care of business on Sunday that I'm going to be like, well, I'm not even going to watch that game because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to take a peek at that game. I'm going to watch that game because I want to see what happens. I think the Jets, they need to build on something going into next season and into the off season, and knowing they have Sam Darnold. I mean, the Jets have a lot to play for on Sunday as far as how their offseason can go. So I look for them to come out and just put up a fight. Like, I really do look for them to put up a fight against the Patriots. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Jets win that game. I mean, I know we're talking about the New York Jets, but it would not surprise me not one bit if the Jets put a game together that ended up beating the Patriots. And I said it on the last podcast with Dustin. I know it probably didn't get out because of the service was so terrible, but now that I got that fixed, I'll say it again. going into the last 3 weeks of the season, really felt like that 2000. I can't remember if it was 2011 or 2012 season where the Texans were like 11-1 or 11-2, something like that, and they only had to win. They only had to win one game to wrap up a 1 or a 2 seed and get the bye and avoid New England until the AFC Championship game. And they couldn't put it together, and they ended up dropping all three that season and ended up I want to say they ended up a 4 seed hosting the first round playoff game against the Bengals, and then of course having to go up to New England in the second round. And they ended up getting drubbed. But I felt like coming down to the end of the season, um, coming down to the end of the season, I just had that same feeling as I did. And Lamont tweets at me. He says, "Not sure how I feel about you opening up on the offensive hiccups in the Eagles game when that was all on the defense." No, you're right, Lamont. And I'm not even really speaking on how the offense performed. All I'm speaking on is the mindset coming from above, coming from your head coach, who is also your offensive coordinator, coming from that individual in a situation where you're 4th and 2. You know it's at stake if you win. You know it's at stake if you lose. And that's the approach he took in punting on 4th and 2 and then punting on 4th and 5 from the plus side of the 50 is what I'm talking about. I think the Texans did offensively everything they could to win that game. I think they did more than enough to win that game. I think again we see flashes, and that's another problem with the philosophy or the approach offensively is you're not getting Akins involved enough. I'm sorry, that guy, this kid Akins. I mean, we don't really know how good he can be because they don't use him enough. They don't make it a priority to get him the football at any point in the game. And I think they're robbing themselves of opportunities and plays that can be made because they aren't doing that. I think this guy needs to be involved way more heavy than what they've been using him. And I understand a lot of people will bring up the fact that the offensive line needs help, the tight end needs to block and blah. Akins is good enough to get open within a 7-yard window. I mean, he is good enough, he's quick enough, he's fast enough, he's agile enough, and he's big enough to get open within a 7-yard window. And who's going to complain if you're picking up 6 or 7 yards on first down? Because that's the play that the defense is giving you. Who's going to complain? Who's going to be mad about that? You know, 2nd and 7, 2nd and 8. You telling me you can't count on this guy to 7 yard where A, be able to pick up the first down, or B, move the ball close enough to the marker where now you're working with a 3rd and 1. Now you're working with something where you don't have to extend the play. You can go quick. Deshaun doesn't have to sit in the pocket. So I didn't really mean to, I didn't, I hope it didn't come across as me knocking on the offense, because I think the offense performed as valiantly as they could considering the situation. No Lamar Miller, uh, Demaryius Thomas goes down. Unfortunately, that's terrible. I mean, how awful is that, right? Um, but in my mind, they still have guys good enough to get the job done like they showed on Sunday. And Deshaun Watson being the main guy is why I have the utmost confidence in their ability to make plays and do what they have to do to put the ball in the end zone, to put points on the board, to put them in position to win. The only thing I'm questioning is the mentality. Is that the mentality going forward? Because let me tell you something. On Sunday, if the Texans have a 4th and 2 situation from the 42-yard line, and it's a one-score game, and they punt, that's going to tell me everything I need to know about Bill O'Brien, because Sunday is do or die. Sunday is do or die. Now, yes, I know the Texans have made the. Well, they've already made the playoffs. They've clinched. They're in. I mean, and I hear people talk about, well, we just need to rest everybody. We need to rest. No, you don't need to rest everybody, because proof is in the pudding of what happened this past Sunday. Even though I did tell y'all Seattle was going to beat Kansas City in Seattle. I mean, I said that again. Y'all, it may not have come across on the podcast me and Dustin did because the service was so bad, but I did say Seattle was going to beat Kansas City, so the Texans even had a chance to be a 1 seed. And lo and behold, what happens? Seattle beats Kansas City, and here we are. Here we are. So it's more the mentality, the mental side, the I guess you could say, the philosophical approach by a head coach who is also an offensive coordinator. And it's gotten to the point where, because we've seen it time and time and time again, Bill O'Brien has put Romeo Crennel and that defense in situations to have to hold in order to win a game when the offense showed no effort to do so on their own part. I mean, you can go back to last year's Seattle game. There was a couple more games where the defense didn't hold and we ended up losing, and Deshaun balled out. I want to say the New England game is one of them when he stood toe to toe with Brady. But hey, man, at some point, when do we go, hey, 4th and 2, plus side of the 50, Bill O'Brien, do your defense a favor and go out there and have your call a play for your offense that's going to be executed, that can pick up a 2 or 3 yard gain, move the sticks, and continue on with the drive. I mean, at what point do we look at that? Yeah, I mean, the defense, they didn't hold. A team starting at their own 10 with with less than 2 minutes on the clock, that should be ball game. It should be ball game. But I mean, remember going back to last year, Russell Westbrook needed 3 plays in Seattle to go about the same distance. I want to say 90 yards. It was like 85 yards or something crazy like that, where it took them 3 plays and they scored and the Texans lost. So at what point as a head coach do you go, you know what? After all this time, I've put it on the defense to make stands. They've done it. They've also failed. You know what? I'm going to put it on my offense this time. I'm going to put it on my. Why is it that you don't get that aggressive mentality and that aggressive mindset that you had on the drive where you took the lead back from the Eagles with the throw to the young wide receiver who I can't even think of his name right now. I'm drawing a blank. But why not have that mentality in less less desperate situations? Why not have that approach when it doesn't have to absolutely be that way? That's what I'm questioning. That's what I'm saying. That was the point I was trying to make. Because going into the playoffs, you're going to be put in a situation where Bill O'Brien is going to have to count on Deshaun Watson and his offensive staff to come up with a big play and pick up a big first down, or to pick up a certain amount of yardage to get him in the field goal range, going to halftime, kicking a field goal at the end of the half to extend the lead, or maybe to cut into a lead. And I just, it worries me because I don't know what his mentality is, because it just seems to me in his entire tenure here in Houston, Texas, and I'm sure Pat, as great as he is and hard as he's working, I'm sure he can pull up a situation where they go, look, Bill O'Brien said do this here, and they did that, and it worked out, and the Texans ended up winning. I couldn't tell you one of those situations off the top of my head, because I don't think I've ever seen it. I don't think it's ever happened. I don't think Bill O'Brien said, "Hey, it's on you guys now to go make a play and pick up this first down, salt this game away," or whatever the case may be. I honestly don't think, like, one of the big questions I still have to this day is, please point me to a game in which the Texans came out of it victorious, and you could honestly look back and say Bill O'Brien did what great head coaches do, and he led that team to victory by the play calls, by an adjustment, by a substitution, whatever the case may be. Bill O'Brien did what Bill O'Brien needs to do to get the Texans out of that game with a victory. Because I can't remember one off the top of my head. I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure it's happened, and somebody would have to point it out to me. But off the top of my head, I can't think of it. You know. So, and you're right, Lamont. He says at this point, Lamont feels Bill O'Brien's not going to change. This is who he is. You're right. This is who he is. Let me ask you a question. Is this the guy you want calling your plays inside of 5 minutes of a fourth quarter, down by 4 in the AFC Championship game with a chance to go to a Super Bowl? Because chances are he's going to start that drive off with a run, which is one of the funnier things in 2008, is how much the Texans run on first down and how much people hate it. I mean, yeah, people pull up numbers and they pull up stats to say, well, they don't always run on first down. They're only running on first down. They're only running on first down so many times. But it's funny because it just seems like It seems like you get the feeling at the end of the game, like, why do we run on first down every play? Even though it may not be the case, it felt that way for whatever reason. And it's felt like that all season. Which brings me to one coach, a guy who I respect, Mike Zerline. He he kind of went on a little tirade after the game on Twitter about, how he thinks it's funny that the average Joe knows exactly what the Texans are doing on first down. And, to some point, I agree. It's pretty funny that people claim to know that they think they know what the Texans are doing on first down. But that's not who we have to worry about. I mean, it's funny. You can let those people say what they want to say. But a lot of times on those first down runs, all season long, it seemed as if the other team knew exactly what was coming. And I mean, what's really important here? The fact that me, average Manny, just a guy who watches the game, can honestly sit here and say that, oh, I knew that play was coming. I knew that play was coming. Or is it more important that the Philadelphia Eagles know tendencies, they know game plans, they know habits, and it just, I mean, you couldn't get the run game going on Sunday for many reasons. They couldn't get the run game going for many reasons on Sunday. Not only because it felt like they were predictable, but because Philadelphia is a pretty good run defensive team. I mean, they play the run pretty well, and to expect the Texans to go in without Lamar Miller, their starting running back, to expect them to go in with Deontay Foreman, who's been out a year with an Achilles, and of course Alfred Blue, the battering ram, to go in and rush for 130 yards. That's probably unrealistic on your part if you thought that's what they needed to do to win. And I honestly thought Alfred Blue was going to have a bigger game than he did. And the reason I felt that was going to run right at the Eagles. I thought they were going to go right at the Eagles downhill. But it seems like, and I could be wrong again because I'm just a guy who watches the game. I haven't broken down the film like some people do. But to me, it felt like there was way too many zone runs going on. There was way too many runs that were being stretched out. You don't beat a Philadelphia Eagles team by running a zone run game and expecting your guy to take the ball, cut to run east and west, and then find a running lane. I don't think you're going to find a running lane against a team like the Eagles, against a team like the Bears, against a team like the Titans, against a team like, even here recently, like the Colts. I think the Texans are better suited if Lamar Miller is not in the game or he's got to come out of the game for the rest and they feel like they have to run the football with Foreman or Blue. I think their best chance of success is lining them up 7 yards behind line of scrimmage, giving them a designated hole, as we like to call in football terms, to run through, whether it be 2-4-6-8 or 1-3-5-7, and blocking as such and having those guys run downhill at the defense. It doesn't make any sense to have a guy like Alfred Blue or Deontay Foreman running horizontally and not vertically and trying to find a hole in the run lane to run through, because chances are your offensive line isn't good enough to create those holes in the zone scheme. But we've seen these guys fire off the ball and open up just enough space. Listen, a 5-yard run is a good thing on first down. A 4-yard run on first down is a good thing. A 6-yard run on first down is a good thing. It starts that set of down in a positive light if you can pick up more than 3 yards of carry. If you can pick up more than 3 yards on first down, you're headed in the right direction. And, and Lamont says here, he says, I rewatched that game. Doug Peterson was not going to lose that game. That dude showed you exactly how serious that game was to him by all the fourth down attempts. Texans came up against a buzzsaw, a trapped wild animal. Eh. I don't know if I agree with that, Lamont, simply because they weren't a buzzsaw in the first half. I mean, the Texans pretty much contained them and went into the half with a lead. And not only that, but the Texans, again, up 3, 4th and 2 from inside the 50, had an opportunity to extend that lead. And who knows how the game plays out then. Yeah, I mean, the Eagles knew what was on the line. You knew the Eagles weren't going to go away. But the Texans had their opportunities, man. They had their opportunities to put their foot on the throat and put that game away. And instead, they didn't. I mean, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that the Eagles won because Peterson understood the situation where his life was on the line, and maybe that may have been the difference. Doug Peterson feels like that he knows we lose this game and we're out of the playoff picture. Period. That's it. We're done. And Bill O'Brien is like, well, I mean, if we lose this game, it's not the worst thing in the world. We can win next week. We can count on these other teams to lose. He probably felt like Pittsburgh was going to lose, which they did, which got the Texans into the playoffs. There were a lot more scenarios in favor of the Texans coming away with a loss than there was Philadelphia. Philadelphia was do or die. So in that sense, I understand that. In that sense, I see that. And but I mean, come on. Let's just say this is game 7 of the regular season. Does Doug Peterson not go for it on the same fourth downs that he went for it in this game? I think he does. I think he does because he's trying to win a football game. And so I don't know, man. I just think I worry. That's one of my worries going into this week against Jacksonville because let me tell you something. A lot of people were laughing today on Twitter that uh, Blake Bortles was starting for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Lamont pointed it out to a couple of people. Blake Bortles kicked your ass last year twice, and you can point the finger at all the people that were injured, and we didn't have Deshaun, and you know all of that. Well, if the Texans come out, especially their front seven, if Texans come out and play the way they did against the Eagles, that front seven, and they apply no pressure on this guy, he's going to be bottom line. Period. The most disturbing thing I took away from last week's game was how non-existent the front seven was, minus a few plays from Reader, minus a few plays from Clowney. And Clowney had a good game. He played a solid game. He played a game you would expect Jadeveon Clowney to play. But it was just surprising to me that Whitney Merciless didn't seem like he was on the field, and along with JJ Watt. And I think, here's the biggest takeaway I got between this is the difference between Doug Peterson and Bill O'Brien. When they started on the 10, JJ Watt lined up in the same spot every play on that drive until he got burned. And by that I mean JJ was lining up wide. He was running upfield, and literally all the right tackle had to do was he didn't have to block JJ. All he had to do was guide JJ upfield. And Nick Foles is a good enough quarterback to slide under that and make a throw. And it happened after every single play. I'm thinking JJ needs to change it up. What he's doing is not working. He's done it 6-7 times in a row. They're on to him. They know what he's doing. He needs to switch that up. And then sure enough, man, Philadelphia, aided by a bullshit call on Clowney, gets just close enough in the field goal range where they can finally run the football. And what do? They give it to Darren Sproles, and all Sproles does was run to the spot that JJ was when the play started because he wasn't there. And you got a 13, 14-yard gain. Now they're in field goal range. And, of course, the very next play after that play, JJ's down, lined up more inside. He's still on the outside, but he's closer to the line of scrimmage. He's closer to the right tackle. He's closer, and that's the difference between Bill O'Brien and Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson saw that and said, hey, that's okay. Let him keep doing that. Let him keep doing that. These other guys on the left side, we can double Clowney. Whitney Merciless is useless. We can single up on these other guys, double Clowney, single up on these other guys. And JJ Watt was a no-show. And JJ Watt being a no-show and JJ Watt not really doing anything to help the cause and putting pressure on the Foles in that last drive, the way JJ was doing it and the way JJ was not getting it done allowed the Eagles just to run right where JJ was, pick up 13 yards, and boom, that was game. That was ball game. That was the most disturbing thing to me, how your front seven and, people, well, the corners were hurt and we had Colvin playing and everyone's injured. And, well, no one in the front seven unit was injured. Everyone was accounted for. Everyone was present. Everyone was playing. You should have been able to get pressure on Nick Foles, and they failed to do that all day. And Foles dropped a 500 piece on them. It's crazy. It's crazy that Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. Let's not kid ourselves here. Nick Foles probably leaves Philadelphia, goes elsewhere, gets paid, and could be a Pro Bowl quarterback for all we know. Who knows? Of course, the question would be, would he be good under a different coaching staff than the one he has in Philadelphia? Who knows? I mean, the only way we find that out is if he leaves Philly and signs somewhere else and gets paid, because he will get paid if he leaves Philly and goes somewhere else. But the front seven did nothing to help the cause. And you can put it on the DBs, you put on the corners, the only reason why Honey Badger got burned on that long touchdown play, and to be quite honest with you, he couldn't have covered it any better. I mean, we're talking like an inch. An inch was the difference between him getting a piece of that football and that ball falling incomplete and the guy catching it and scoring a touchdown. But if there's pressure on the quarterback, there's not even time to make that throw, if we're being honest. So I just think, yes, there's some concern with the Texans secondary, just due to injuries. But I think the biggest concern is with the front seven and how they can't seem to get anything done the last 3 weeks, and they're completely healthy. Granted, they may be bumped up and bruised up and have aches and pains behind the scenes, but we don't know that. I mean, and as an average Joe fan, you look at it, if they're on the field and they're lining up for 70-80% of the defensive plays, we assume they're healthy. They're healthy enough to be out there to play. Then they need to be healthy enough to produce. And I don't know, man, but while everybody's looking for the Texans secondary to improve and hopefully be better as the playoffs roll around, I'm looking for some production out of that front seven, out of somebody not named Jadeveon Clowney. That's what I'm looking for, because I think that's a bigger issue on the Texans defense than anything else. Is Whitney Murray. I don't care what they have to do. They have to get pressure on the quarterback, and it doesn't matter what quarterback they're playing. If they don't get pressure on the quarterback, you can say that about any team. If teams don't get pressure on Baker Mayfield's going to crush them. If teams don't get pressure on Marcus Mariota, he's gonna make them pay. I mean, right? If teams don't get pressure on Eli Manning, Dak Prescott, I mean, if you don't apply pressure to these NFL quarterbacks, you're gonna hurt, and it's gonna hurt, and you're probably gonna struggle to win that football game. And that's been the case. That's been the case. So hopefully the Texans turn it around defensively, and hopefully I'm into this game with the mindset of win at all costs, right? Even if it means going for a couple of 4th and 4s, 4th and 2s, 4th and 3s, even if it means taking those chances, they have to win this football game, right? I mean, I guess I could take a Twitter poll and ask, what would you rather do? Would you rather go on the road for the first round of the playoffs, or would you rather be at home and host a game for the first round of the playoffs? And does it even matter? Does it even matter where the Texans are going to play that first round playoff game? Does it matter? I mean, I've heard a lot of people say that just get Deshaun into the playoffs and let the kid do work. That's fine. I think Deshaun's been doing work all season. I think in a lot of cases, Deshaun has been the James Harden of the Houston Texans, carrying that team, dragging them across the finish line, dragging them to victories, because the defense hadn't been able to do their job. And, at times the offensive line hadn't been able to do their job, which means the running backs can't do what they do. So it's really been the Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins show, as the Texans go in 2018. And you just can't have that come playoff time. You need others involved. You need to be able to run the ball. You need to be able to involve these tight ends, with the exception of Ryan Griffin. That guy can never play a game for the Houston Texans again, and I will be completely okay with that. Um, so a lot of things going forward, a lot of things to look forward to this Sunday against the Jacksonville team that, again, hey, they're not going to come in here and roll over. The Texans are going to have to win that football game. And if the Texans don't put their best foot forward in all aspects of the game, Jacksonville could make it a real shitty last Sunday of the season for Texans and its Texans fans. Because then you go from a possible 2 seed to a 6 seed, right? I mean, who wants to be a 6 seed? A 6 seed probably play who would be the division winner? Baltimore. You'd have to go to Baltimore to win. If it all played out that way, well, we've been to Baltimore before in the playoffs and it didn't work out as well as we thought it would, right? So, you know, and my cousin Jeremy texted me and said I said Russell Westbrook. I meant Russell Wilson. You know what I mean. Get to talking a little fast. Uh, you know. Anyway, let's switch gears. That's what the Texans got to do. They got to win on Sunday. They're in um they're in a do or die situation as far as I'm concerned. Because if they go on the road in that first wild card playoff weekend game, I think their season's over. I don't think they pull it off. I just simply don't. I don't see them winning that first wild card game if they have to go on the road simply because of where they'd have to go. Now, if they play at home, now that obviously changes things. I think they can get through a home wild card playoff game and move on to the second round. Have to go up to Foxborough if it all plays out that way. Let me tell you something. If it does play out that way, at some point you have to win in New England. At some point you have to win in New England. Period. The Rockets had to, the Rockets never had to win in Seattle. They got lucky because Denver took care of that. 8 seed be the 1 seed. But they had to get through San Antonio. They had to get through Phoenix. They had to get through teams that gave them absolute fits for years when they won their championship. And same thing with the Rockets. The Rockets, um, they got a lot to work on. We'll get to them in a minute. But as far as your Texans go, I'll close with this. To me, I'll say it again, it's do or die Sunday. Either you win and you put yourself in a position to host a playoff game the first weekend, or you lose and you're going to get bounced in the first round. Period. So that was my Texans talk for the week. Send me comments. Let me know. Agree, disagree. Um, you know. No, Lamont, it's true, man. I've seen a couple of people say, since you're already in, go ahead and rest everybody up and get them healthy. Like the whole Kiki QT thing. What the hell good is it to sit Kiki QT if he's healthy enough to play this week? Are we just going to expect him to come in the first round of the playoffs because we rested him an extra week and be on point with Deshaun, be on key with game speed, be in game shape? I mean, if he's healthy enough to play this Sunday, he needs to be on the field playing, period. That's it. That's just one example. It's just one example. So, congratulations to the Rockets getting it done. Christmas afternoon, that 2 o'clock game against Russell Westbrook and Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, it's crazy because Daryl Morey went out again and brought in Austin Rivers, who, in my opinion, has been for his career, he's been an average NBA player. I mean, he dips below, he dips a little bit and he's a below average player at times, and he'll play really well for a stretch and he's an average NBA point guard, and he just fluctuates in between up and under that line of average below average, average below average, average below average. So Daryl Morey go out and he picks him up after he's bought out after a trade. And he brings him in, and lo and behold, he had an instant impact on the game. Like yesterday, he hit a couple of key threes to help push a lead. He played fantastic defense on Russell Westbrook in the almost did it, Jeremy, in the fourth quarter, holding Russ to. I want to say Russ had like I don't even remember. But he didn't have enough points to even make a difference in the ball game. That was all. Uh, that was all Paul George doing work in the fourth quarter to keep that game close. But this Rockets team, I don't know, man. I think they are who their record says they are right now. I think they're a team who is slightly better than average, and we all know, that having a 500 record, means you're an average. You're right in the middle of the pack. You're not maybe as good as people think you are. You're not as bad as people think you are. I think for the first time this season, I'm double checking here. I think for the first time this season, the Rockets are 3 games over 500. Yeah, they're 3 games over 500 for the first time this season. Now, here's what's crazy to me. Okay, this is absolutely insane. The Rockets are 33 games into the season. The record's 18 and 15. They're 11 and 5 at home. They're 7 and 10 on the road. They're 3 and 4 in division, and they're 11 and 11 in conference. 18 and 15, you look at this and you go, man, they're really underperforming. They look like shit. And you would be correct because all that's true. Um, they had a really, really rough start to the season. They're only 4 games back. They're only 4 games out of the 1 seed, which is crazy to me. That's completely crazy to me. And what does that mean exactly? That means that you have teams who have been just kind of fumbling their way through the NBA season over the last 3 or 4 years, who now have all of a sudden put together teams that are good enough to compete in the West, that are good enough to make the West a true conference wide competition when it comes to the seeding. I mean, San Antonio, they're 18 and 16, Memphis is 17 and 16. And then you start with Utah, Dallas, Minnesota, New Orleans, and Phoenix. They're all teams under 500. Phoenix being the worst at 8 and 26. But even then, you know, your New Orleans, who sits at 15 and 19, they're only 7.5 games back out of the 1 seed in the West. You heard that correct. 7.5 games back of the 1 seed in the West. So the West is super ultra competitive, and Memphis got off to a great start. Now they've fallen back to the pack. They're only a game over 500. Utah, I think, is the most. To me, Utah is the most dangerous team out of the teams that have been cellar dwellers for the past couple of years. I think Utah is probably a team that's going to end up in that top 8. Because right now you got Denver as the 1 seed. How hard is that to believe? Although they've put together a pretty talented roster, they have a pretty talented bench. I really like the way they play basketball. Um, it's kind of like a Euro style basketball with NBA elements thrown in. And I mean, they're surprising everybody right now. Will they come back down the earth and will the league catch up to them and maybe, will they hit the regression to the mean? I don't know. It's going to have to play out because I think they're good enough. I don't think they're good enough to maintain the 1 seed, but they're good enough to end up a top 4 seed for sure. So that being said, you look at some of the moves the Rockets have made this offseason, and there's a lot of chatter, um, a lot of talk about how mistakes were made in letting Ariza go and Maabute and look, if I thought long and hard about it, and it seems to me as though Chris Paul and James Harden and Clint Capella and Eric Gordon, it seems to me that those guys rely on chemistry more than people let on. Like, I think people look at those guys and go, "Well, Chris Paul's a great point guard and James Harden's a great point guard." But I think people downplay the importance of chemistry on a basketball team, and not only that, but I think maybe there was a little bit of butt hurt going on when Ariza left and Ma Butte left, and Daryl started bringing these guys in. Mark Carter Williams, the Ennis kid, the Carter kid. I mean, guys, guys who Daryl Morey brought in to make impacts on this roster, to be key pieces on a roster in a system that could possibly be another 60-win team. But those guys they've failed miserably. Daryl Morey has failed miserably, and this isn't Manny hate speaking. This isn't, we know how you feel about Daryl Morey, Manny, because of that. No, not at all. Just look at the play. Look at the play. Look at the numbers. Watch the games. Those experiments have failed miserably. The Rockets didn't start really getting on a roll until Mike D'Antoni did the one thing that Mike D'Antoni can't do in order for the Rockets to make a successful deep run back into the playoffs, and that's shorten up his rotation. The Rockets didn't start turning this thing around until D'Antoni shortened up that rotation. He started playing 6 or 7 guys night in and night out, That's when things started turning around. That's when shots started falling. That's when wins started to add up. And now you're looking at a situation where even with Austin Rivers on the roster, you're still not deep enough. You're still not deep enough to turn the season around and maybe hopefully get 55 wins. And even if you do, you're going to use your core and your starting five. You're going to use them to the point where come playoff time, they're not going to have any gas left. They're not going to have any gas left for the playoff run. They're probably going to bow out in a series and this is, hey, look, there's a lot of time left in the NBA season. We haven't even gotten the All-Star break. Then there's a trade deadline. What can Morey do to bring in who to solidify the bench? Because that's what he has to do. He's got to bring in somebody, maybe even two guys to come off his bench who can be relied upon to help carry the load and to take pressure off of CP3, to take pressure off of Harden. Um, me personally, I thought they should have allowed Nate to walk and brought in a younger, more athletic big to complement Capella. Um, no offense to Nene, he's just doing what he can. I mean, he's just doing what he's able to do in terms of, um, you know, in terms of him being as old as he is. And hopefully, I mean, every time he steps on the floor, we pray that he does nothing to injure himself again. And, when you're in that situation, that's not a good situation. And Lamont, you say, from what I've read in terms of timelines, it looks like the Rockets' turnaround coincided with whatever special practice Harden called. Yeah, maybe. And maybe in that practice, he told Mike, listen, Mike, this is who you play. This is who you don't play. Because if you don't play these guys and you play these guys, we're going to go on a winning streak. We're going to start winning games. We're going to look better because we're more NBA capable. Whereas Michael Carter Williams is not NBA capable. Carter's not NBA capable. I mean, they have flashes. Everybody have flashes. I mean, shit, if I went out in the NBA game and I got 12, 13 minutes, I'm going to be able to hoist up, 3 or 4 shots and maybe one of them goes in. I mean, because that's pretty much what you were getting from those guys. Um, and I really think this whole special practice Harden held wasn't about a rah-rah, hey, we need to pull together, we need to start working together. I think it was about, look, man, you want to win games, stop playing these bums at the end of the bench. Stop playing these dudes that Daryl thought was a good idea to bring in to help carry the load when me and Chris need a break. That's what needs to happen. They need to stop playing because they suck. And I don't think it was anything because they didn't change anything. I mean, if you watch them play, they're the same team. The only difference is the guys that are playing are hitting the open shots. The guys that are playing are hitting the open shots, are not turning the ball over, and they're playing better defensively because, I mean, even when Gerald Green's in the game, and for what Gerald Green does coming off the bench, being able to hit threes, being able to, being able to do the things that he does offensively, he's no better than Mike Carter Williams on the defensive end. I mean, Gerald Green is the hole in the boat that will sink your ship if you have to depend on him defensively. And without a Chris Paul being here, being able to play with Gerald Green on the floor, you can't hide Gerald Green. You simply can't. And if he's not giving up a layup or he's not missing the defensive rotation, he's fouling people. And what happens in the NBA? You foul people, you put people on the free throw line, they usually make them. He's costing you points. But again, if you had Tucker, CP3, Gordon, Harden, and Capella, those guys, any combination of those guys on the floor with the Joe Green, you can kind of hide Joe Green a little bit. You can kind of hide him a little bit, but not now. And it's Joe Green brings good things offensively. He brings good things to the table when it comes to offense in terms of shooting the basketball and being as he is. Although he does have those "what the hell are you doing, Gerald" moments. Like, really, don't do that. He's got plenty of those moments in him. So, and then And my boy Jeremy asked, "Does Gordon have too much of a green light? Does Gordon have too much of a green light?" Man, I'm gonna say no, simply because I think Eric Gordon's at the point in his career now where he can accept the fact that maybe his 3-point shot isn't falling, because we've seen that this year where he's just not right from the 3, and he takes the ball to the basket and he changes it up. Um, I don't think he much of a green light, because I think he can learn that balance. He's learned that balance, and he's learned when the 3 isn't falling, he's gotta do something different, and he's been more than willing, which may speak to his health this year. He may feel better than he's felt in a long time, because he's willing to do anything other than just relying on a three-point shot. He's going to the hole, he's taking some mid-range jumpers, he's doing different things on the nights his 3 isn't falling, um, which is okay by me. And, and to be honest with you, I think he was shooting 29% from the 3 last week. I'm pretty sure that percentage has gone up because he's had a few good games. But it was almost hurting to watch him take a 3 there for a while, but then we started noticing. Listen, Aaron Gordon is as good a penetrator as anybody in the league. I mean, this guy can get to the hole. He's got an explosive first step. He's good off the dribble. He's super quick. He's super intelligent, and he's super strong when he gets into the paint. So I would actually encourage him to do more of that as far as a green light goes. Than And I actually said it 2 years ago when he first got here. Into quarters, into half, into the second quarter, into the first half, and into the third quarter. I would have much rather have seen Eric Gordon with the ball in his hands as opposed to James Harden in those situations where you need a good quality last shot of a quarter. I would rather it be in Gordon's hand, because he wasn't dead set on taking a 3. He was gonna take what the defense dictated, and he was gonna do what he had to do to score. And I think the Rockets missed out in his first year here. I think they missed out on a lot of opportunities that could have changed outcomes of games had Eric Gordon had the ball in his hands, um, as opposed to James Harden with the ball in his. And I know that's crazy to say, right? Because James has been the last 3 years. James Harden's been incredible. But oftentimes he settles. James settles, and uh, we see that way too many times. Like, you know, if you have a 5-point lead and there's a minute and a half to go in the game, it's completely understandable for the Rockets want to go ISO and run the clock down. Like, completely understandable. Especially if you have the other team in the penalty. That's completely understandable. But I'm sorry, James Harden, your reigning MVP, seems like he doesn't understand that, or it just seems like he doesn't care enough, or is just too lazy to take advantage of all those things going on. And instead of using his dribble to penetrate and maybe kick out for a wide open look, or use his strength to draw contact and get to the free throw line, or finish at the rim, this guy just settles for 3 after 3. And it's infuriating, because obviously, if he hits it, it's great. But if you don't, now the team has possession, probably on a long rebound. They probably get a run out. Now you're in face of a situation where the Rockets are scrambling on defense, which opens up layups, it opens up threes. And now, instead of maybe getting to the free throw line or trying to finish strong at the rim, being up 7, now you're down. Now you're only up 2 because they come back and they hit a transition 3, or you're only up 3 and they've only burned 2 seconds off the clock because the outlet one more pass and they're getting a layup because your defense is scrambling because of the long rebound. I mean, that's how I see it. That's how I see it. But then, basketball's changed. Basketball's changed to the point where if I start breaking down X's and O's and I start talking about late game execution, how it should be, people are going to know how old I am. They're going to go, damn, dude, you're old. This isn't the 90s where you throw it down to Jordan and let him fade away on the post, or throw it down to Akeem, or they'll see my age, because that's not how the game's played now, and I understand it, and I totally agree. Look, Say what you will about Greg Popovich, he's probably the greatest NBA coach in the history of the league, and he said it himself that the game of basketball, it's lost its beauty, and it has lost its beauty. And Mark Cuban made a comment to that last week, kind of in the same meaning as far as in the direction of basketball goes. And I actually happen to agree with both of them wholeheartedly. I think the art of basketball, the beauty of basketball has been chipped away. And what we're left with is more and more of guys who are just superior athletes, but are absolutely raw when it comes to basketball skill and mindset and IQ. I've been preaching on this for years. If you listen to the podcast in the past, I've always talked about the direction of the NBA and where it was going and how I thought it was on a downhill slope as far as skill level, IQ, things of that nature. And nothing has really changed to make me change how I feel about that. I still feel the same exact way. So that's something that, I'm call me stubborn, call it what you will, but that's just how I feel about the game when I watch it. It's not like Rocket games are boring, man. Rocket games, whew, watch are an extremely tough watch. And it's because you're going to get the same thing every single game, every single night, every single quarter, every single offensive possession, every single it's the same exact thing. The only thing that's different in a Rockets game, which could possibly keep folks interested in what's going on, is how are they going to play and who's going to show up on the defensive end this tonight? How are they going to stop this team defensively? Is what That's the only thing interesting to watch about the Rockets because their offense is horrible. It's terrible. You run pick and roll. If the pick and roll's not there, you go ISO. And then when James goes out of the game, there's a little bit more ball movement, but more likely than not, in those possessions, James isn't in the game. You're gonna go ISO ball with somebody else, with Eric Gordon, right? And of course, PJ Tucker's always in the corner, willing to shoot the three. Um, so Rockets basketball is what Rocket basketball is, and that's really you have to give credit to those guys on the floor for the Rockets because they're so elite offensively that they can change absolutely zero about their approach, and teams still have a very difficult time stopping what they're doing. That goes to show how elite offensively they are. That goes to show how elite offensively James Harden is. Now, this dude is a tugboat, man. This guy has been pulling this franchise. CP3 was here last year to help, but before that, it's been all James. And from what it's looking like, it's going to have to be more James than not this year also because I don't think CP3 hamstrings now it's his left hamstring, which is, it's a what is it? Soft tissue muscle injury that is always there to cause a problem. And it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate because I can't foresee championship with the Rockets. I just can't. I just think that they're either going to bring in a third superstar to help them uh win games, but then that's going to do is leave your bench depleted like it is now. Or you build your bench and in the long run you're not going to have that third superstar to really get them over the hump. And I know they were a Chris Paul hamstring away uh from getting to the finals. It feels like the way they were playing against the Warriors. It definitely feels that way. That had Chris Paul been healthy in game 7, they beat the Warriors. But I mean that's kind of on Dream Street, even that's kind of asking for a little bit too much. But I just think the Rockets will continually be missing out on a part or a piece that they need to make them a championship basketball team. And Rockets winning tomorrow versus Boston, no, I'd put my money on Boston. Boston's playing good basketball. I mean, I think, you know, I did not hear that, Lamont. Lamont says, did you hear Austin Rivers' comments about warming up, about how he was told the Rockets warm up with just by basically shooting threes? That wouldn't surprise me. If you've ever been to a Rocket game with this current team, that's really all it looks like they do is just a bunch of threes being hoisted up. And they warm. Hey, listen, Coach Billy Carlisle, the greatest coach I ever played for. May he rest in peace. My high school basketball coach. He preached. You are gonna play. You are gonna play the game you are warming up for, just like you warm up. You're gonna play how you warm up. If you come out and lollygag in warm ups, you're gonna get your ass blown off the floor. He said the game doesn't start when we toss the ball up for the opening tip. The game starts when you run out of the locker room and you first run onto the court to warm up for said game. That's when the game starts. And I remember our first game on varsity. We came out warm ups, and we were loose, we were relaxed. We weren't really lollygagging, but we weren't really going full throttle in warm ups. And he jumped on us for it, and said, asking our big guys, why are y'all taking threes? Y'all aren't gonna take threes in the game? If you are taking threes in the game, there's something wrong. You need to be taking game situation shots. You need to be taking the same shots you're gonna be taking in this game. You're gonna be taking same shots that you're gonna take in the flow of our offense. And if that's the case and that's how it's applied to the Rockets, it doesn't surprise me that they warm up by jacking up all threes. Because that's really all they do is jack up threes. I mean, every game there's that stretch, man. Every game there's that stretch where they've either built a lead and they go cold and they refuse to do anything other than shoot up a three that just keeps the other team in the game. And before you know it, a 16-point lead turns into a 4-point lead, or they're going to come out ice cold. And then all of a sudden they're going to catch fire and they're going to be down 14 or 15. And before we know it, it's a 2-point game and they're right back in the game. And all because of the 3-point shot, and look, I mean, I've said it till I was blue in the face. I said it so much before that I just quit saying it because I got tired of saying it. If the Rockets bring in guys who have the mid-range aspect to their game, they're going to win 60 plus games every single year. Oh, lo and behold, Chris Paul gets here, had his best year from mid-range, his best shooting percentage in his career from mid-range last year, and they win 65 games. I mean, I kind of know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about basketball, and that's you have to run your offense in a way where they have to guard the entire, before couldn't have to guard the mid range. They didn't have to guard 12, 15 feet away from the basket. They either were going to snug up on you on the 3-point line or they were going to lay back in the paint, but there was nobody really worried about what you were going to do in that mid area. And when Chris Paul got here, he ate and he had his way with teams because he took advantage of that. And now you kind of see the struggles the Rockets are going through because now Chris Paul's, he's been hurt the last 2 games, probably sitting out again tomorrow. And there's no sense of a mid-range. I mean, James is taking a couple, but even then, like I still ask this question. And I still fail to understand why it is the way it is. Why can James Harden not shoot a jumper off of the dribble moving forward? It's the strangest phenomenon to me. It's like, all the good shooters in the history of the NBA, all of them have been forward-moving players, meaning Ray Allen. Ray Allen can catch and shoot on a 3 because his momentum was carrying him forward. Or he'd pump fake and take 1 or 2 dribbles and shoot his mid-range jumper moving forward. I mean, just think back. Is James Harden really the only NBA superstar in the history of the game that shoots the basketball better moving away from the rim before shooting his shot than anyone else in the history of the game? I'd have to say yes. I would like for somebody to find somebody who was better at shooting the basketball moving away from the goal to get his shot than James Harden. It's amazing to me. This guy, I don't know, and a lot of these guys' skills and talents are developed at a young age and when they're coming up. And I'm just wondering what made James Harden absolutely have to step back to be as effective as he is doing that when shooting the basketball. I mean, it's crazy to me. Crazy. Even when he wants to go mid range and he can, he shakes a guy and he takes a guy's ankles and he gets by him. Rarely do you see him pull up off the dribble and just pull straight up and shoot a regular mid-range jumper. It's always nope, one more dribble behind the leg to back up one more step and then take the shot. It's amazing. It's amazing that he's strong enough to do that, you know, for 82 games and then do it in the playoffs. But I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like it. This guy absolutely cannot shoot a jump shot moving forward. I can't like a part of me wants to do what I can do whatever it has to whatever I have to do or whatever it takes to get into a gym with James Harden and say, James, this is what I want you to do, bro. I want you to dribble around this cone as if somebody's setting a pick. I want you to take two more power dribbles, and then I want you to raise straight up and shoot the basketball. And then I want to have him do that like 100 times, and then track his percentage out of those 100 shots, how many go in and how many he misses. And I'm just curious to see what it would even look like. I almost think it would be like if I tried to play the game of basketball left-handed because I shoot right-handed, but it would probably look really awkward, and the timing of it all would kind of be off. You know what I'm saying? Just kind of like one of those real awkward basketball players that you see where I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it wouldn't look right if he tried to shoot a jumper going towards the basket. I don't know. That's just me. That's just me. So, okay, here we are. So we're doing from the nosebleeds day after Christmas, kind of a slow day. So I jumped on to talk a little Texans, talk a little Rockets. Um, Not real sure what else there is to talk about other than how did Christmas go? How did Christmas go? I had a good Christmas. I got everything I got was golf related, which is pretty cool. All the gifts I got are to help me improve my short game, which at the moment is probably the weakest part of my game right now, seeing how I've been playing golf a lot. Um, and it's so funny because I look at that stuff and I'm like, man, these are great gifts. I got a little chipping thing where I can practice chipping, and I got a putting green where I can practice my putting, and I look at it and I'm like, man, it's pretty cool. I really can't wait to get out and use this stuff. And then I think, well, come February, like golf stops for me because of baseball and volleyball. And I guess, now, I didn't have this stuff before, completely out of the picture where I didn't swing a club from February to early May, right? The baseball season. But now I actually have something that I can kind of keep sharp with, I guess, or continue to work on and swing my clubs. At least I'll be able to swing my clubs in that time frame, and I won't have to put them up and then collect dust completely because now I have something to help me out with that. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, man, it was something else I wanted to talk about. Jeremy asked, how shocked or not that LA handled the Warriors? I was actually extremely shocked because the way the third quarter ended in that game with LeBron going out, going down, going out, it really did set up going into the fourth quarter like a typical Warriors fourth quarter, and in a sense that they're probably going to start getting out in transition. They're probably going to start hitting threes. They're probably going to start, clamping down defensively. And I tweeted it out. I said, well, I totally expect the Warriors to score 45 in this fourth quarter and blow them out. Like, this game won't even finish close. But hey, props to Rajon Rondo and what he did. Rajon Rondo, a guy who we all know quit on the Dallas Mavericks in the middle of a playoff series, a guy who's had issues within the league for years because of his attitude and just kind of how he approaches things. Um, but to see him step up with LeBron going out like that and really involving those young guys, and that's another thing, you know, the Lakers, uh, n- they showed the ability to get buckets however they came. They didn't settle on threes. They didn't settle on jumpers. They used their athleticism. They used their youth, and they allowed Rajon Rondo to lead them on the offensive end to where every time Golden State came down in the first 4 minutes of the fourth quarter and hit a bucket, the Lakers came right back and answered. The Lakers couldn't. I mean, the Warriors couldn't get past that 4 point lead. They couldn't. The Lakers would go up six. The Warriors would come out and hit a shot. It's 4 point lead. The Lakers would answer 6, 4, 6, and then eventually it's like the Lakers' will to answer what the Warriors were doing in the fourth quarter broke the will of the Warriors, and they went on that run and they pushed the game out to where it was over, and everybody, all the superstars in Golden State were sitting with about 4.5, 5 minutes left to go in the game because that game was done. It was over. And, you know, props to LA. Again, props to Rajon Rondo and props to Luke Walton and having those guys believing in themselves that they could do that and not, I mean, just I can't say enough on how they didn't settle on the offensive end. And that's one of the reasons why they went on and they were able to answer what the Warriors were doing time and time and time again in that fourth quarter because they didn't settle. I mean, it's you know last night in that Lakers game, that fourth quarter, that was the definition of not settling and being able to stay aggressive, enabling them to answer what the Warriors did. And, that I mean, not I'm telling you, man, I've grown so sick of it watching the Rockets settle time and time and time after again that when I get to watch teams who don't settle and who don't refuse to take those shots or who refuse to take those shots and just settling with 8 or 9 seconds on the shot clock, instead being aggressive, making something happen, penetrating, getting the ball to the rim. I mean, it's almost like that's really the only joy I have left of watching NBA basketball is when teams do that. And we're probably going to see Boston do that tomorrow night while the Rockets settle. And if shots aren't falling for the Rockets, well, of course, Manny, if shots don't NBA teams can't win. Nah, not true. Not true. There's been plenty of teams over the history of the NBA whose shots didn't fall, but they stayed aggressive. They got to the free throw line. They got to the rim. They found ways to win games that way. You know, I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. So we went and saw Aquaman. Took the kids to see Aquaman the other day. Pretty good movie. I was pretty impressed. I was really impressed at how they managed to fit it all into the movie because there was a lot of information, there was a lot of things to process, there was a lot of events that happened throughout the movie, and it was pretty cool. Like when I got up and we left, and I was really satisfied with what I had just seen. Like, man, this is really a really good movie, and it's kind of gotten me. I know you don't have to tell me, different group, but it's got me more amped than I was to see the Captain Marvel movie and the new Avengers movie. Because I've been kind of on the fence about Captain Marvel and how they're going to do that, and then the new Avengers movie coming out and how that's going to play out and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, just watching Aquaman. I mean, I think Aquaman's probably, and I don't think David Nuno will agree with me, and a couple of other Superman, Batman fans out there. I don't think they'll agree with me, but I think Aquaman's the best movie they've done. I think Aquaman's the best movie that DC has put together. I mean, they really did a good job. And JoJo can't stop talking about and asking about when they're going to come out with the Flash, because he really loves the guy who plays Flash in the Justice League. He he really really likes that guy, and matter of fact, he likes him so much he got on Netflix and started watching the series The Flash. And it's probably the one time as a parent in regards to JoJo. I didn't say, "Hey, let me check this out first. Let me watch it for a little bit, and then if I think you're old enough to watch it, you can watch it and this and that." I just said, "Hey, it's a Flash. Go ahead, man. Knock it out. Start watching it." So I kind of took a chance on that, but from what I'm understanding, the series The Flash on Netflix isn't really it isn't it isn't bad for a 9-year-old to watch, I guess. And he likes it. He's into it, man. He breaks it down. He talks about it. Talks about it all the time. Uh, so just again, Aquaman was a great movie. I recommend you going and catching it and getting ready for all the great movies coming out in 2019. Captain Marvel, Avengers, a new Toy Story, I believe, is coming out. So we're looking forward to that. We're going to see Bumblebee tomorrow. I'm excited about seeing Bumblebee tomorrow because what I'm reading, the Transformers series had gotten really, really, really terrible. And I don't know if it was because they decided to bring in Mark Wahlberg or it just got terrible. It was just it's turned into something that they should have stopped 2 movies ago. They should have stopped making Transformer movies 2 movies ago. But apparently Bumblebee has um it goes away kind of from what the Transformers saga has been, and it's a complete standalone movie in the way in terms of how they did it. So I'm excited about seeing that. And of course, in 2019, we're all waiting for Game of Thrones to return. Um, can't wait for that. And also, did anyone happen to catch? And I know Lamont tweeted it out to me and Dustin, and I watched it. The Kevin Spacey video, where he's playing Frank Underwood, and I think he's kind of talking about what he'd been accused of in real life, mixed in with he knows how terrible this season of House of Cards have been, and a lot of reason is that is because he wasn't in it, and the way the way he's not in it, and the way they handled it, and just the show in general was a big pile of crap this season. Um, it was just weird, and so I watched it, and then I got into a wormhole and saw that Joe Rogan and Brendan Schaub on Joe Rogan's podcast broke down the video themselves, and so I watched that as well. And as they are breaking down that video, whenever they saw that video, I guess yesterday or the day before, news out of I want to say New Hampshire. I'd have to fact check that, but you guys know me. I don't have enough energy to fact check these things. I'm just going off of what I think I remember. Somebody is charging Kevin Spacey with sexual misconduct, sexual harassment, something along those lines. And it's not in Hollywood. It's actually on the East Coast. And like I said, New Hampshire, maybe Delaware, one of those small states up northeast. Um, and again, I don't know how true it is because I haven't seen anything on it other than what they showed on Joe Rogan's podcast. And it was a headline, it was from a newspaper from that part of the country. And I'm just interesting to see if anything comes out about um with him if he truly is being charged with these, with the allegations set upon him. I mean, I would think that this would be really, really big news. And then that would make the whole video that he did that much more weird and more not understanding what the hell that was all about. I mean, because he even alludes to like coming back, like, hey, you guys, y'all didn't see me die, right? And then he puts his ring on and he walks off. Very strange, very weird for that to go down. So I'll be looking for that over the next couple of days. So, you know, that's that. I hope everybody had a very Merry Christmas. I hope if you're going back to work this week, I hope they're really just kind of letting you coast through and just kind of sit on the clock and not really. I guess what I'm saying is I hope you guys don't have to crunch numbers or data or any analytics before the end of the year to where you're running around frantically trying to get it done because you just had to take 2 days off of your week for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. I hope that's not the case. I hope everybody's relaxed, ready to bring in the new year. ready to start 2019, and hopefully in 2019 we get more consistent with the podcast once again. We start coming to you on a normal time slot. Um, Maybe not as many times a month as we used to, but definitely a consistent number of times each month, breaking down and talking about what it is we want to talk about. So, again, go ahead from the Nosebleeds on YouTube, share the link on Twitter, subscribe, spread the word around. Um, just kind of help your boy out, build this thing back up and get to where we once were. Um, this time, hopefully, better than it was last time. So that being said, I'm gonna cut out. I'm gonna go see what JoJo's doing because he's awfully quiet. JoJo is awfully quiet somewhere here in the house, and I have to go see what he's doing. So next time, look out. I'll definitely let you guys know well in advance on when we're gonna be on again, and hopefully you guys can join us then. Um, from the Nosebleeds in YouTube, just put it in the search engine, look us up, and then look for the picture of me because there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that have to do with noses bleeding on YouTube. Yeah. So you know, that's uh that's something I didn't think about. I didn't think about that when I started doing this. Is there's a lot of things about nosebleeds on YouTube. So that being said, until next time, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Hopefully, maybe I talk to you before the New Year. Maybe I don't. If I don't, have a Merry New Year, Happy Christmas from the Nosebleeds Maniac.